Some people have closer together eyes, like Adam Driver, and some people have farther apart eyes, like that lady from The Gambit. I don't remember what her name is, I'm sorry. Hey everyone! So, a couple of weeks ago, I asked you guys to send me some of your art that you would like me to concrete, and here we are. A couple of weeks late, but you know, oh well. So, I want to preface by saying that my heuristic for choosing the art I'm going to review was not based on how good or bad it is. That itself is incredibly subjective, but based on what I believe I could give the most useful constructive criticism on that would be applicable to a lot of everybody who watched this. So the drawing tool I will be using in this video is called Paint Tool Sci, and I chose it because it is free. Whether you use Adobe Photoshop, Fire Alpaca, GIMP, Clip Paint Studio, Procreate, what matters the most is your base artistic fundamentals. Really, anything, even paint, can look great if you know how to use it correctly. Without further ado, let's begin! So this first piece is an untitled piece submitted by art_person_lazy on Instagram. They didn't give me any specific details to focus on, but I already have a good idea of what will be useful to talk about here. So what I like about this piece is that she's definitely, you can see that this character, she is definitely in motion, so her line of motion is not straight up and down, but actually kind of diagonally going to the side. That's very good. I can see that she's either dancing or in action. One thing that I want to focus on in this piece is actually going to be light and shadow. So you can see here that there's a spotlight coming from the upper right, upper right, shining downwards, right? If there is a light source coming from the upper right, then naturally they've already got a good idea that this side of this character is going to be lighter and this side is going to be darker. However, they've gone ahead and drawn a almost perfectly straight line down the center of the character and separate it into light and dark. I imagine here they probably took a black layer overlay and overlaid it on top and erased this half that's lighter. So we're going to do a bit more. We're going to make this a little bit more realistic by showing off the forms of the character. Okay, I'm back, and as you see, I have recolored in the image to remove the original shadow. So let's go in and paint in where I believe shadows would be appropriate. Hey, voiceover K here. So while I've got artist K in the background painting at 8 times speed, I want to talk a little bit about what I'm doing here. So I'm starting with a hat, and the top of the hat is actually a cylinder-like form. And if you've studied still life before, you know that the darkest part of a cylinder is the part that faces away from the light. So while I'm painting every part of this character, I, in my mind, imagine where this light is coming from and what parts of this character it actually bounces off of. So it's going to miss the top of that hat because the top of that hat is actually facing away from the light, so it's mostly in dark. Now I'm moving on to the hair. When I render hair, when I shade it, highlight it, I like to think of hair as giant, like, locks. Individual strands are very time intensive to do. Unless you're going for a super realistic look, usually it's better to condense the hair into these locks than to think about it as individual strands. You can even think about it like, what if you took glue and poured it in your hair and your hair kind of stuck together? It's a little bit more like that than like a million teeny strands. So you can see here I've given a little bit more of a detail with the hair and giving it some spikes, all in the name of giving it detail without going over detailed. So next up, I'm doing her skin. So with skin tone, when I try to shadow skin tone, I try to give it a more reddish tone. So you can see here, instead of just picking only a darker version of her original skin tone, I've chosen to push those hues more into this reddish tone. And that's because we as humans, we have blood pumping under our skin. And this gives this shadow a more lifelike feel. Without these red tones, if I only choose a darker hue, then this character would look a lot more dead, more sallow. It's not going to have the appeal that a red tone will have. Next up is her face. I want to note that even though you can't see her face, you can't see her eyes, nose, and mouth, I believe they're still there underneath the bandages, so you can see the way of color the bandages. Her nose still exists underneath there. So that means that it's not going to be a perfect line down her face. It's actually going to bend up following the contours of her nose. And lastly is the dress. Now, to be honest, I'm not very happy with how I colored this dress. I would say that if I were going to give myself a concrete, making this dress, giving it better shadows, giving it more form would definitely be what I would focus on. But, you know, I don't want to spend too many hours on one paint over. So that's what I did. And I recolored in part of the hair to make it darker. I felt like it looked better like that. And lastly, you can go in and see me doing a little bit of color correction here just to give it more depth. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like there's a very strong spotlight shining on her. And I think I know what we're missing. We're missing something called rim lights and also highlights, but especially when I talk about rim lights. So I'm going to go on the layer above her. So rim lights are areas of extreme light that you add to the outlines or the outside contours of a subject. They help add a lot of drama, a lot of interest to your piece. I would say this isn't the best example of rim lights I could have used, but you can see me trying to paint some onto her hat. In her hair, it tends to kind of blend in. And then I also paint in some general highlights or areas where the light is bouncing more strongly. I've chosen more yellowish tones for my highlights because this spotlight that's shining light, I've got in my mind that this spotlight is shining yellow light, and so if something's particularly bright, it's going to be bright with yellower light. Alright, so here we are. So here it is with the highlights and rim lights, and here it is without. The difference isn't huge, but you can subtly see that you get more of the idea that this is a very strong spotlight with these rim lights and the added highlights than without. The piece looks a little bit flat without them, to be honest. And so the last thing I want to talk about for this piece, there's many other things I could talk about, but the last thing I'm going to talk about in terms of light and shade is this shadow over here. Is this shadow down here. And realistically, she probably wouldn't be casting a perfectly circular shadow, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just go in there, and instead, let's talk about what this shadow probably would look like. So I won't lie, I had a lot of difficulty with understanding how the shadow for this piece would work. You can see that her left leg is off the ground, and that makes it a lot more difficult to understand the shadow than if it were on the ground and able to be connected directly to the shadow. You can see me drawing a bunch of arrows as I'm trying to figure out in which direction this light is casting downwards, and I try to keep my shadows parallel to those downward casting ray lines. So after a bunch of attempts to workshop what does this shadow look like, I'm not trying to go super detailed with it, but I still want it to be somewhat realistic. So I used this little hack for getting at least a base outline or base idea of how your shadow should look. So basically you take the selection of your character and you transform it until you're like, yeah, that looks about right. And here I am being like, hey, the reason why I'm having so much issue with working this piece is actually because I don't have enough space at the bottom of the canvas to really get a good feel of it or so. So you can see me extending the canvas, taking a look at this shadow, and then being like, I understand now, finally. And here I'm able to draw out a kind of idea of how the shadow should look like. You can see that I don't draw it nearly as detailed or as flat as my little hack is. I prefer it that way. I think that if the shadow's too detailed, it actually kind of draws attention away from your character. So it's better to have like a general gist of idea of how the shadow looks like. So here's my paintover, and here's the original piece. You can see I saw a great opportunity to show off some of the forms in this figure by having her interact more with this spotlight and cast some light and dark shadows. For this piece, we focused on expressing forms with shadows, rim lights and highlights, and also casting a more realistic shadow. And I will probably have a side-by-side after this. I really like the character design in this original piece. And so thank you so much, art person. Thank you so much, art person Lazy, for submitting your piece for Concrete. I really enjoyed working on it. My favorite part of working on this was probably bringing out these forms in the hair. But overall, great job, and thank you so much for submitting something. Alright, so that first concrete actually took quite a while, so I'm going to try to zip through the rest of these a little bit faster. So the second piece we're looking at is called Bravery Girl by Bunny-Cubby, and Bunny-Cubby has asked me to focus a little bit more on anatomy, and we will totally do that. I think this is a great opportunity to talk about how to draw hair also. However, first I want to talk about something I love about this piece, which is the fact that she's decided to use two secondary lights. I love these secondary lights. You can see that they've lit up one half of this character in red, one half of this character in blue. It's creative. It gives this piece a tone. Maybe she's, well, it's called Bravery Girl, but maybe she's solemn, maybe she's pensive. I think these two secondary lightings are great for expressing that. And I think that she could have also used rim lights, you know, like we talked about that last piece, to maybe make those lights even stronger. So like for example on this side we could have like given sort of a rim light over here, just to like impress upon the fact that, you know, these lights, they're very moody, something like that. So since Bunny-Cubby has asked me to talk about anatomy, I am going to focus mostly on the anatomy of the face. So let's draw a standard artist realistic head. This isn't necessarily 100% applicable to anime drawings, especially the eye proportion part, but this is going to be pretty useful to know, especially if you're going to if you want to do art in a class. So let's just draw ourselves it's kind of like a circle, the top part of the head, except the top part is actually a little bit more squared off than you would imagine. It's not a perfect circle, it's a little bit of a squared off circle. Next, I'm going to draw a center line down the center of this face, and we're going to draw in the jaw. There we go. Now this is kind of like a squared egg, so let's call it our squared egg or something like that. Let's just go ahead and erase these bottom parts of it. So here's the outline of our head. Let's talk about the parts of the head. So the horizontal center of your head is going to be where your eyes are. And this is going to be about, let's say about here. And so And your head's going to be about 5 eye widths wide. So we'll just draw in what I think to be, yeah. So here is how large the eyes are. Now this is going to be this is not going to be true for everybody. Some people have closer together eyes, like Adam Driver. And some people have farther apart eyes, like that lady from The Gambit. I don't remember what her name is, I'm sorry. And then generally the bottom of your nose is gonna be a little bit longer than 1 eye width down. So we'll just mark it maybe down here. Some people have larger noses, some people have smaller, but the size of your nose are gonna be around the inner corners of these eyes. And finally, the lips are going to be slightly below the nose. Not a whole lot, slightly. Let's go with around here. And these lips tend to go to not much longer, no longer than the center of these eyes. There we go. Here are your lips. And then lastly, your ears. The top of the ears are going to be around the horizontal center of your eyes, like around here, maybe a little bit longer, and go down to the bottom of your nose, the bottom of the center of your lips, somewhere around there. You know, these are all artist hacks, and they also don't describe everybody. You know, it's just a little bit of artist hacks. So these are the general proportions of the head. Yeah. So this isn't, so first off, the face shape that she's trying to express in this this ghostly face shape that I've created are slightly different. Hers is more long and more heart shaped, and mine is a bit more squat, more square shaped. But you can kind of see how the eyes, her eyes are larger than this standard model, but I think that's could be marked up to an artistic choice. You know, anime tends to have humongous eyes, and it's more of a stylistic choice than realistic. However, I would probably say that the forehead is slightly larger than might be what is appealing. You know what? All right. So, okay, so the forehead, I would say possibly a little bit large. So let's go ahead and lower down that forehead a little bit. So paint, 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 paint. Yeah, I'm a cool beatboxer. I actually like using a red square brush more than a round brush, but that's just me. Yeah, there you go. So let's say, yeah, move it down to here. Now she's still got kind of a large forehead. That's fine. I have a large forehead. You gotta be kind to yourself. Now, the nose, that's more of an aquiline nose. I'm gonna say that that's fine. Her ears, though, you can see that the ears are a little bit teeny. So let's just make those listeners a little bit larger. Yeah, let's make it go down here. And also they start a little bit too high. So let's just go there, and then yeah. I've given her large ears. So currently she doesn't really have a jawline. Like it would be around here. So let me go ahead and give her more of a jawline. And it also gets some of that reflected light over where her jawline is. She's got cute freckles. Okay. And the other thing is that her lips are a little bit too close to her chin. Like she's got no chin. You know, she got very full lips, but she got no chin. And that's gotta be uncomfortable. So we're just gonna enlarge this bottom part of her a little bit. So we're gonna balance it in both ways. We're gonna make the bottom of her face a little bit larger. Not too much, or else you'll, like, you know, go overboard. But still. And then you also want to take the top of the lips. You've got a philtrum over here, by the way. That's called a philtrum. I just like drawing the philtrum to remind myself that we as humans have philtrums. And I'm also going to move the lips upwards. So I've decided to fast forward through this part because I would say my greatest weakness, or one of the many of my many weaknesses, are lips. I just can't get lips right, and you're gonna see all the way until the end of this painting that I keep on retouching it, touching it, moving it. I just can't draw lips. And so in the future, if I were going to improve my art, I would definitely say practice lips. So you can see I've like suddenly widened her mouth and she's got this Joker-esque smile. I realize that's very creepy, and squish it back down. Typically lips are going to end around the center of each of your eyeballs in terms of width, but again, this is all based on personal preference. Expressions change this, so you can see me try to express a little bit of that colored light that shines on the lips, but overall could be better. As far as body proportions go, we'll just outline what would be more correct body proportions, but that would take more time than I currently can spend on it. So go ahead and say shoulder. So we have the neck here, right? She's got quite a skinny neck right now. I can't, you can see. So when you're doing a human, a neck tends to be around where your jaw, maybe a little bit thinner than your jaw, but not by a lot. So maybe around this or so, going downwards. As you can see, she's got a very thin neck comparatively. So if I were going to draw the neck, I would probably go for around here or so. Shoulders are a little bit high up. Would lower the shoulders, widen them. And then when we get down to the torso, currently she's got a bit of an awkward area going down here. So what would be her torso would be continued down here. Her sweater's kind of tight on her. Chest area. And then her elbow's a little bit high up over here. I would place it maybe slightly lower, not by a lot. And then again, this elbow a little bit high up. She's got it around, well, the arm in general is a little bit too skinny, so I would place it down here. And especially this hand and this forearm are both too short. So when we move it down here, the hand would probably start maybe around down here at the highest. And so her hand wouldn't even be visible in this piece the way it's currently cropped. And she does have a round form for her torso, right? So instead of being straight across, how the bottom of the shirt is straight across like this, it would make more sense for the bottom of the shirt to actually be kind of a downward bend like this. Right. But currently I don't have the time to do a full body redraw, so we'll just focus a little bit more on what I was interested in talking about, which is the hair. So I'm going to start a redraw of this, and hopefully I have a useful voiceover over this. Sweet. Alright, let's talk hair. So when I paint hair, I try not to think of hair as like millions of teeny individual strands. You can see that Bunny-Cubby has attempted to paint her hair by putting down a flat color and then drawing many strands on top of that flat color in the direction that the hair would go, and then perhaps dodging and burning those individual strands on a different layer. I would say the only time you would really want to draw every single little individual strand of hair is if you're doing a hyper-realistic piece of art, and this is definitely not hyper-realism. So instead, let's follow a principle of less is more and group those individual strands of hair into bundles we'll call locks. So these locks kind of have a 3D form where, in general, you can think of them as like weirdly shaped cylinders, and one part of the cylinder will have shadow, one part of the cylinder will have light. And you can see here, I do indeed try to express that where I paint more broad swaths of light and more broad swaths of shadows than to go in on each individual hair. Now you will see me paint a couple of small strands of individual hairs. You can see it here in the flyaways, in the forehead hair, and a couple of smaller lock bundles. Those are great for adding, so that's where less is more comes in. These few small strands of hair actually give it more realism than if every single strand of hair was expressed. Like these small strands of hair have a lot more power to them. And you'll see for her hairline, I have decided to blend it more into the hair than to, and actually to lower her forehead, her hairline here, just because I love my large forehead, but you know, sometimes it's a bit larger than is realistic. And finally, I've decided to repaint the eyebrows to be less harsh against her skin. Overall, this hair, I would say hair is also another one of my weaknesses, but the general principle is paint bundles. Less is more. Okay, so in the 20 minutes I've gave myself, I was able to do this much of the hair. I think that she's starting to look more realism based than she was before. I quite enjoy how this stripe of harsh light gives her a really nice jawline over here. I am still pretty unsatisfied with how I've done the lips, but I can't keep on working the same lips for another 20 minutes. So this is the before, and this is the after. I tried not to change too much about the original piece. So what I like about your original piece is the fact that you have a lot of flyaway hairs to dictate some detail, and I try to keep some of those flyaway pieces over here and over here. She's got some unruly hair, but I think that really sells the fact that she is a brave rebel or something like that. So you can see the side by side. Hopefully I have it on screen now. And I hope that you can learn something from this. Hopefully, but yes. Thank you so much, Bunny-Cubby, for submitting your piece. I think that you are a great budding artist, and I hope to see you in the future. Yeah. Alright, so this last piece we're looking at is a scene by Snowly Packle. Here, I want to take a more traditional red line approach instead of doing a straight paint over, and talk a little bit about creating your compositions. So, a lot of great artworks tell a story, and this one's no different. This one's telling me a story about a boy who's being carried by his balloon. He seems a little bit scared. He's unsure of where this balloon is taking him. Now let's talk about all the parts of this piece that sell me on this scene. He has one eyebrow cocked up, telling me that, you know, he's a bit questioning, you know. He's not sure what's going to happen. He is looking downwards, meaning that he's concerned about where he's going. And the way that his body is positioned shows me that he is still unsure. He's not like in a power position. He's very scared. Not necessarily scared, but either way, he might not have meant for this to happen. One thing that helps me sell a scene better is cohesiveness and logic. So let me point out something. His hoodie strings are going towards the left of the scene. So that indicates to me that the wind is blowing towards the left. However, that also means that this balloon string, logically that should be blowing towards the left also. The fact that it's not is a bit confusing. A couple of other things that help also sell this wind direction I can just go ahead and draw over that. A couple other things that can help me sell me on this wind direction is actually his hair. I would like to see his hair being blown also. So let's say these cowlicks, instead of going straight up, maybe they can be blowing back. And so can the back of this hair too. Just move it back a bit. This lock in front, well, instead of going straight up, oh man, what if it's being blown back? And so is this piece in front too. Yeah, just really sell me on the idea that he's moving at some speed. Alright, so that was cohesive logic. Next part is body poses. So one major issue about this scene, I don't like this foot. This foot, the bottom of the foot, is actually parallel with the bottom of the canvas. And it really kind of tells me that shouldn't he be standing on something? It feels like he should be standing on something. Because having this bottom of the foot being parallel with the bottom of the canvas shows to me structure. Instead, let's bend this foot so that it's more of a dangling feeling. If you're dangling from something, I doubt your feet are going to be straight like this. They're probably going to be dangling like this. And so that's what I want to see from this foot. And you can also move the shoelaces. Sell me a little bit about the wind blowing the shoelaces back. Yeah, that's some good stuff. Alright. Next up. I want to talk a bit about the way that the boy is hanging. So right now, this is a slightly static position. He does have some lean going towards him, but it looks like he's actually got pretty good control over his body. So does that mean that he's actually only rising up? Like, would his motion being only upwards? Well, it can't really, because the center of gravity for this balloon is over here, while the center of gravity for the boy is around over here. If the balloon were carrying him straight upwards, then these two center of gravities must align. So instead, based on the tilt of the string, and the fact that these two center of gravities aren't together, I'm going to actually say that the balloon is pulling him towards the right. And that might contribute to why the winds are blowing to the left. So let's talk about poses that could help sell the idea that the balloon is carrying him laterally rather than just upwards. Alright, so you can see I've workshopped 3 different possible poses for the boy based on how fast the balloon is going. So let's say the balloon is just, whoa, we're going speedy fast. Well, he's basically just holding on for dear life, being tugged behind him. He doesn't have a lot of structure to his back arm. It's basically flapping freely in the breeze, because, you know, all he's thinking about is, oh god, I survived this, oh no. So this is the first option where the balloon is going speedy fast. Now here, the center of gravity of the balloon and center of gravity of the boy don't matter a lot. Instead, it's the idea of this whole range of motion going from the boy all the way through the balloon on one line. Now the next part is if the balloon's starting to slow down. It's like still going at some speed, but not super fast. So you can see here, once again, follow through with this line of motion between the balloon string to the rest of the boy. And once again, he's going just straight upwards, you know, there's no lateral pull at all. And here, once again, the balloon string matches the rest of the boy's body position. So that's really how I would say you would sell a scene to me, wherein every single position is at least similar to how you've got this cartoon position currently. Overall, though, I really like your composition and your interest in cool poses. Those are both pretty great. And great job. I think that you're doing a wonderful job. I really like that idea. I really like this detail where his glasses are basically his eyes, and you've got pupils looking through his glasses as if those were the eyes. That's pretty cool. So great job, Snowly Packle. And I don't have a side-by-side this time. That's fine. So that's everything I've got for you today. I had a lot of great submissions, way more that I would love to do more concretes on, but I'm quite tired, so I will do them another time. Thank you so much for watching to the end. If you learned something, if you enjoyed watching this, I would really appreciate it if you gave me a like and maybe commented perhaps. And also, if you are interested in seeing more of my concretes, if you would like to be alerted when I am looking for submissions for new art concretes, please do subscribe to this channel. It would help me out a lot. I hope that you have a nice day, and see you next time. Bye bye.